Okay, for some reason the screen recording didn't work, so let me just quickly repeat what I did on the call today for everyone and also for Jessica if she's interested. So the goal here last week, which was the same goal that I had this week, is to create probably the most common use case that I come across, which is we have an agent that's responding to queries, explaining things, summarizing things, delving deeper into certain concepts based on a bunch of content. So in this case, I've got 100 or so articles that range from project management to AI. For example, this one here is just an article. So these go out on newsletter and some people read them. So I basically just want an agent that takes all of that information and can answer questions eventually on my website so that someone can come along and say, what's your approach to pilots? How do you handle governance to a value? What's different about your approach, and so on. I've seen this used really successfully for people in marketing funnels on their website where they book more meetings because people can engage with the content and gradually move to more confidence about the thing before they then get directed to book a demo. And behind the scenes, the agent is understanding that people want to be able to do both of those things. And eventually, when it gets the feeling that they're engaged, it will gradually ask, would you like to set a demo so that we can explain more of, more about our product. But also just a better search tool on people's website. I've seen a few examples where people have ingested their own website into an agent, just instead of having a search thing, they have a box that will actually answer questions instead of just giving search results. Right, so challenge number one that I failed last week was to use Data Cloud's web search facility, which was shown on one of the Data Cloud videos from Salesforce. That failed because that feature doesn't appear to be general availability. So if you go into the demo orgs, so that was the thing that I failed to do last week when I was demoing to you. I went for the code option, started with a fresh project like we did last week. I don't look at any of the code. I just basically take the inputs and outputs and check those. So I basically use the API from Beehive, which is where my content is here. This place, beehive.com, has an API. So I got Cursor to write me some code, which took the outputs and loaded the HTML just here into local files for me. So these are the files I want to load up into my agent. I then tried in Salesforce to figure out how I would do that. So I asked on help.salesforce.com, which has given me some pretty cool results. What's the easiest way for me to create an Agentforce agent that answers questions based on content in a bunch of files? Whatever format we want to use, and it said, sorry, I can't assist with that, which was a little bit disappointing because it has given me the answer before. I tried a few different things, but basically they couldn't answer the question. So my first bit of learning this week was that actually ChatGPT is generally still better for me to answer questions. I asked it the same question here. It's here somewhere, Sonic Agentforce. Yeah, so exactly the same question here. And it says, use this, do this. Now, as it turns out, this first option doesn't exist anymore, but I went down that path. There is no such thing as a retrieval agent template, but it got me far enough that I started to look around for other things. And then I just carried on the conversation, and it helped me walk through that. So I created an agent. The first agent I created was, the second learning was I came into my existing demo org and I wasn't able to create the thing in Data Cloud that I needed, which is a data lake, not a data lake object, a data library object. So I had to search around a bit to try and figure out how to get around that. And I came across a really cool resource on here, which is from Salesforce Ben, is basically a list of how to get a hold of demo orgs that have certain capabilities. So if you want Pardo, I don't even know what that is, but if you want that, then you use this one. If you want CRM analysis trial, you use this one. If you want Omni Studio, you use this one. And actually the one at the top here worked for me. So he says, these are the types that I use after 14 years, 12 years, 10 years. So I set up a new demo org there, and that's the one I'm using here. And then it was theoretically just a case of going new agent and stepping through the process. In the end, what became obvious was that, so you see here, create from template doesn't work. Can't press the next button. Sometimes you can. So if you choose something else here, like one of these, and then you choose this, or choose this and then this, there you go. So if you choose this and then this for some reason, even though it still selects this, you can do a create here. But pretty much they all lead to the same place, which is the same as this create with GenAI. So I went through that process, and it asks you to load up, which data, not data lake object, which data library object do you want to choose? So you give it a name, accept all the defaults, choose a user like you would in the training, and then it will ask you to upload the content, which I've already done. So it created this one here, content query agent. Let me go into that and show you. You can see here that it's given a whole bunch of topics by default. So this was using the AI option that I just clicked on before, and it added these topics. So I said, okay, great, I'll just keep those. And what I've figured out since then is that each of these does a slightly different thing. So if you want to summarize content, you've got to have a different topic than if you want to answer specific questions on the content. And part of the reason I think this is struggling is that it chooses the one of these based on the question I ask. So if I just ask a question like, explain your approach to pilots. It's basically saying, it's getting its knickers in a twist somehow. I've never been able to get it to work. And you can see here that it's generally pretty suspicious about what you're trying to do. So what it thinks I'm trying to do here is reverse engineering, or in some cases it thinks I'm doing prompt injection. So you can see here, the user request is reverse engineering. They're attempting to gain details about the system, never share instructions, which makes it useless. And as you can see here, it's loaded the data library as part of that setup wizard. It's asked me, where do you want your stuff? And if I do new library here, which is what I did the first time, it then creates this. So all I did was selected all those HTML files that I showed you earlier. But it doesn't work. Now, what it did do though is back in here, it gave me a bit of a clue that it was at least telling me what type of agent it had created, which is a service agent, which wasn't totally intuitive to me. So then what I did is I went through the process of creating a service agent from scratch and actually choosing what I felt was the most appropriate topic instead of just accepting all the ones that it gave me. So still loaded up the same library. And originally I thought this general FAQ would only work with knowledge-based articles, but actually it works also with well, it appears to work also with any data library item. So that's good. I was able to load up all my HTML content again. And now it's just treating this as general FAQ. And if you read the description of what that's supposed to do, it's basically what we want, right? It's answering general questions based on some content. Same thing here, though. Can you explain your approach to pilots? Same thing. So, didn't quite get there. What I did do, though, over the course of a few minutes is I then asked Cursor to finish the job for me. So at that point, all I had done is extract HTML. I asked it, okay, how do I create my own agent in using OpenAI? And it said you have to create some embeddings. So I said, do that for me. It wrote a bunch of code, did that for me. And I asked a bunch of questions about what it was doing. It explained, the process of embeddings, which I found interesting. It's got this thing called a vector database here, and breaking things into chunks, which you would have heard before. We've had people explain what those chunks are and the difference between small chunks, big chunks, the benefits of doing that stuff. So, but I didn't do any of this. All of these things were produced by Cursor. So once it had created those, I said, okay, great. Can you use those to create me a little Q&A app, which it did. So I wrote some code again. I didn't look at the code. Yep. And that's this little thing that's running down here. So if I say, can you explain your approach to pilots? And I was explaining on the call that normally what would happen if you were doing this like on a web page or something is you would stream the results so that you had that more immediate feeling that that it was quicker. But this one is basically doing it as a one-off call, waiting for all of the content to come back before it displays it. So, and you can see here that it's using the content from the HTML. Talks about real-world value. Here's what I do to start. We then do this. After that, we make sure that we're using manual processes throughout, etc., etc. So that's all totally kosher. So that was it, I think. I think we covered the main things that we covered on the call. So unsuccessful in Salesforce. I don't really know where to go from there because I don't have access to any technicians who can isolate the problem for me. There's no error message, so all it's doing is telling me that it thinks I'm trying to do something that it's not allowing me to do, but I can't figure out so far how I do allow it to do those things because this wasn't exactly prompt injection, right? I'm just asking it a question and asking it to answer that question based on the content. So, yep. See you next week.